Thanks, Lucy. It's great to have so many people here today to share this work with you all. And this is something that Maureen and Versus Arthritis have been collaborating on over the past 18 months. So yeah, Jack and I are really excited to share this deep dive case study with you today into how we've been designing engagement-focused email journeys focused on recruiting and retaining donors. Before we jump into that deep dive case study, just a really quick introduction from Jack and I. First of all, just to clarify, we're going to be talking a lot today about journeys. That's a piece of jargon we use a lot in the charity not-for-profit sector. So just a quick clarification on what we mean by that. So today we're going to be talking about email journeys. So cohesive, coherent, planned series of communications with clear objectives today about donor recruitment and engagement. Why are these so important? Probably something you're already aware of, but they can really build a relationship with your supporters that can broaden and deepen their support for you, your organisation and your issue. And they do this through providing a really rewarding supporter experience, which is hopefully something you'll see more of today. Building understanding, so both yours of your supporters and your supporters' understanding of your issue and your organisation. And they're really good at keeping your supporters actively engaged with you. So we know that past behaviour is always a sign of future behaviour. So by having a really engaging journey in place, it means that when you do get to those big appeals, those big campaign moments, you have a base of supporters who are already ready to act to support you. Jack, I'll hand over to you now to just give a bit of an introduction to yourself and Versus Arthritis.
Thank you. So my name's Jack and I'm the Mass Acquisition Manager here at Versus Arthritis. And for those who've never heard of us, Versus Arthritis is the UK's largest arthritis charity, and we were formed in 2018 after the merger of Arthritis Research and Arthritis Care. And as a charity, we fund research into new and better treatments. We campaign to change public perceptions and to influence policymakers to ensure people with arthritis get the support they need and deserve. And we also provide a range of services to ensure people can manage their pain and live well with arthritis. And just a bit of background as to the organisation that led to this project. Historically, we're an organisation that's been very reliant on our legacy income, significant legacy income, but also a lot of income from investments in intellectual property. And there's been a real push to grow our voluntary income from different sources to diversify our income and help make us more financially sustainable as an organisation. But historically, we've really struggled to recruit and retain new donors at scale. It's been an ongoing issue for us as an organisation. So that really kind of led us to this. Oh, sorry, my slides won't change. Rebecca, I might have to ask you to help out.
Try again now, it should work.
No, look. Oh, there we go, it's gone. So yeah, that leads us to how this project came about. So in the beginning of 2020, we launched a new mass market fundraising strategy, really focused on increasing donor recruitment and voluntary income. And there are kind of two parts to that at its most simple and at its kind of most base of the elevator pitch, really. The first part is growing an engaged audience through relevant low barrier engagement actions to really build, grow the size of our community. And the second part of that was to activate and keep activating those supporters through meaningful actions to build relationships based on shared values. And it's important to note that we're talking about a real broad range of actions. We're not just talking about asking people to donate us support all the time. It's a very kind of broad range of financial and non-financial actions to build that relationship based on those shared values. And everything was supporter-centric at its heart, led by the needs of our audience, not from us as an organisation. And it was clear very early on that we need excellent supporter journeys in order to deliver that strategy. And also, kind of following on from that, we also had really strong insight from our database to show that there was a big overlap between people who are taking campaigning actions and people who are likely to support us financially. So we really wanted to see how we could bring together all of the excellent campaigning work we were doing from the policy and public affairs side and bring it together with our income generation activity to see if we could use that to recruit donors. And also just to give you a very quick overview of how this pilot project evolved. So it started off with an initial project back in October 2020, where we had a lead generation campaign where we were looking to recruit new supporters to our database through a value statement, a pledge. And we wanted to ensure those people had a great welcome and great experience with the organisation, could learn who we are and really build that relationship. And it kind of evolved from there. So we had another iteration of that in April and a continuation of the journey for those people. We also piloted how we could integrate our campaigns network, and our campaigns network was an internal label we had for people who had signed up to be part of a mailing list, really, for people interested in campaign actions. But we wanted to integrate that with our wider journeys to give that more integrated experience for our supporters. And we also piloted another lead generation campaign, this time using a petition to bring in new supporters, and the petition was built around people's right to joint replacement surgery. And then now with all of those different projects have kind of converged on one another, and we're merging to become one ongoing journey for all supporters that can become our organizational journey, and yeah, it's suitable for everyone really, and gives us that that overall journey as an organization. And just to very quickly summarize our aims, really, our aim was to pilot to see whether integrated email journeys, to pilot email journeys that build relationships with supporters, focusing on engagement in order to convert them into donors. And by engagement, we mean trackable actions. And the hypothesis behind this was that an audience-focused journey, including a range of different content and actions, will improve engagement and it'll convert people into donors, and meeting both fundraising objectives, but also wider objectives around campaigning and service delivery and information and support. And what we wanted to learn, we wanted to use these journeys to better understand our supporters, to understand who they are, what they need, how we can support them, and how they would want to support us, and what motivates them to do this. And in terms of measuring success, with all those different kind of projects I mentioned earlier, we set primary metrics for each part of the project. But just to give an example, for the first one I mentioned, that lead generation campaign in October 2020, we wanted 3% of supporters to make a one-off donation during the period of the journey, and we wanted 30% of supporters to take at least one non-financial action during the journey. And we set a KPI around second gifts, because it's really important to us to understand the value and the level of engagement we'd managed to build with these supporters, to see if people were willing to make a second gift as well. And we didn't have a benchmark or a KPI for that, so we didn't really set a target, but we just knew we wanted to measure that, and it was really important to judge on the success of these journeys. And say these KPIs that we set, they were different for each project that we worked together on, but they were all set by our internal kind of insight to set a realistic benchmark for each journey. And yeah, I'm going to pass back to Rebecca.
Thanks, Jack. So just a quick overview here of the approach we took once we'd laid all those strategic foundations. So ways of working were really important for this project or series of projects. So it was really important that we got key stakeholder buy-in from the start, get everyone on the same page with what we were trying to do. We had a really small project team for this, which was really important because we were trying to be as agile as possible in terms of our ways of working. As part of that, we really streamlined sign-off processes. So Jack and relevant colleagues just signed off everything. There was no kind of going up hierarchies and down to get sign off on emails, on actions, on content, which really meant we could work really efficiently and really quickly. And we took a really collaborative approach to content generation and development. So we worked with a wide range of teams across Versus Arthritis. I think there wasn't a team we didn't kind of interact with to generate email content and actions, including even a trustee that sent an email. And here were our journey design principles. So this is how we went about designing these journeys. First of all, we were really focused on the fact that the journey should be flexible and reactive, so even welcome journeys. Because they were integrating campaigning, and because we were also working during the time of the pandemic, we knew that there were going to be lots of things outside of our control. So it wasn't about, okay, this is exactly what's going to happen for the next 3 months and we're not going to change it. It was very much, okay, let's sketch this out. And if things need to move around because of campaigning, because of external things happening, we will do that. And the journey design can flex to accommodate that. We really focused on segmenting and personalizing emails in response to supporter behavior. So that means reflecting supporters' behavior back to them. So if they'd taken a certain action, we would acknowledge that. If they'd made a donation already, we would acknowledge that in future email comms. We wanted to be consistently present in supporters' inboxes, but only with relevant content. So we aimed to send an email at least every 2 weeks, but we would send emails more often if the content meant we had to. I don't think we ever struggled for content, but if there was a period of time where maybe we had to go longer than 2 weeks, then we wouldn't just find anything to throw at supporters. We would just wait and send something when we did have something that was really relevant and met the journey aims. And we continually reviewed and optimized based on results. So again, this wasn't let's roll this out for 6 months and look at the results at the end. This was let's review after every single action and email, see what we're learning and apply those moving forwards to the journey design. Audience hypothesis. So we had some insights and research to inform these journey designs in the project, but we weren't certain about things. So we kind of came up with a hypothesis for our audience. As Jack already said, we wanted to use these journeys to learn more about these audiences, but it's really helpful to come up with something as you're designing journeys and thinking about the content so that you tailor and personalize it in the best way possible. So we knew that the majority of people in these journeys were people who are living with or have a very close relationship to arthritis. We also know that the experience of living with arthritis is very wide-ranging. So the people in these journeys could be people who were really struggling. They could be people who had been relatively recently diagnosed, right through to people who are really coping. So yeah, it had to be appropriate for that and acknowledge that too. And our hypothesis was that the key drivers of support would be things like relevance, the fact that Versus Arthritis is a really relevant charity to these individuals, and that it can also support them. Recognition, so there are 10 million people living with arthritis in the UK, but it's generally seen as an older person's condition. It's not really talked about a lot. So just the fact that recognising arthritis was really important and the impact it has on people's lives. So empowerment, the fact that supporters feel like they have a voice and that they can take part in campaigning, take part in surveys, and feel like they're being listened to and that they can have an impact. And also empathy. So understanding what it's like and using that as a way to drive people to engage. As part of the strategy, we came up with like think, feel, and know or do concepts. So here's just an example. If you're not using these, I really recommend them. Again, they're really great at making sure you're being audience focused. So there's an example there. So we wanted people to think Versus Arthritis is my charity, feel that they're part of a community, and make a donation, as it's going to make a real difference to the lives of people with arthritis. And narrative and voice. So this was really important to the journey as well. Just a few points on how we developed this. So we wanted the narrative and voice of the journeys to be really personal and conversational. So like you're having a one-on-one conversation with a person, you were receiving a communication from a person, not an organisation, an opaque organisation. So to the right here are just some pictures of some people who sent emails. So some of these are staff, some of these are people living with arthritis, particularly people who are waiting for joint replacement surgery, for example. We wanted the narrative to feel really community focused. So really about the power and the strength of coming together to support one another and push for change was a key message. We really wanted to centre the voices and experiences of people living with arthritis. So people with arthritis did send a lot of emails to supporters. And we were also really careful not to we all over our content. So this is something that can creep in when we're being very internally focused. So this meant we were really focused on key messaging, focusing on the community, not on Versus Arthritis as an organisation. Okay, and just briefly to talk through the journey design. So I'm not going to go into this into a lot of detail because, as you can see, this is an example of one of the journey design diagrams here, mapped using Lucidchart, which is a really useful tool. There's too much to unpack here in the time we have today. But this is an example of one of the welcome journeys we designed. Here is a simplified chunk of an ongoing journey that we did. And again, I don't have a lot of time to unpack this in a lot of detail. But what I'd like you to focus on as I share this is you'll see the key down the side. So we categorize every email based on its objective. So whether that's campaigning, a donate, ask or product, an engagement action, signposting to services, which is a really important part of these journeys, and then loyalty. So that's anything that's kind of doesn't have a key call to action, but is sort of building the relationships. That could be thanking a supporter, sharing some news, sharing some case studies, a film, and things like that. So this was from the second half of last year. So in June, we really had a sort of mini part of this section that focused on a campaigning period. So we had an email to target action. At this time, it was also Freedom Day. I don't know if people remember that. So we signposted to COVID support because we knew that people with arthritis and those who are immunocompromised might be concerned around that time. Moving further into the summer, we then had a donate ask connected to that campaign. Jack will share an example of that shortly. And then we went into a period where we had some engagement actions. So we had a sign the card action. Again, we'll share that in a second, and some surveys. And we also promoted the lottery as a giving product. Into October, another email to target action here, but also prompting people to order Christmas cards. We also had another survey. And then a little Christmas period where we tested a value exchange of people ordering gift tags. We had a quiz, we had the Christmas appeal, and then things like sharing season's greetings and a little hopes for the new year email at the end there. This is really simplified. It doesn't include resend, A/B test, segmentation, branching, and thank you emails have been removed as well. But what I would like you to focus on here is just to step back and look at the balance of the colours on that. And just to see that what we were really striving for here was for a real mix of content. So you'll see it's not particularly heavy on donate emails, and there's lots of yellow and pink for campaigning and engagement. There are basically two key strategic decisions that we made for the journey design. So we decided to really focus on engagement. So I wasn't doing pie diagrams as we designed this, but this is actually how that last section of the journey breaks down. As you can see, almost 50% of it in terms of the actions or engagement actions, and almost a quarter are campaigning actions. So just to really highlight that 69% of the actions in this were non-financial asks, 84% in fact were non-donation asks. So keeping that balance was really important. And the other key decision that we made was to daisy chain. So our hypothesis was that supporters would be more likely to donate at the point of taking an action on the thank you page if the ask is clearly connected to the engagement or campaign action they've just taken. The trade-off we had to make here was that we were prioritising fundraising objectives over recruiting new supporters because we weren't having a share ask. But obviously the objective of lots of these journeys was to recruit people to donors. So this means, daisy chaining a donate ask on the thank you page. A couple of examples of this in action. So this is one here that had campaign framing. So this was after a campaign action. So can you donate to help make sure people waiting for joint replacements are heard? And this is very similar in format, but this is a services framing. So this was after a sign the card engagement action. So all of our services are funded by the support of our generous donors. Will you donate so we can continue to support the thousands of people with arthritis waiting for surgery? Okay, I'll hand over to Jack to just give a few brief journey highlights from some of the things we developed.
Yes, so I'll run through these quite quickly in the interest of time, but just to say all of these slides will be shared so you can have a closer look at that after the session. But here are just a few examples of the emails and the actions we sent. So the first thing is to say that all of this was built in Engage Networks. All of our emails and our engagement page and donation engagement pages and donation pages were also all built in Engage Networks with the help of Debbie Boone, who is a fantastic consultant who works with More Onion, and it was a huge help out on this project. But here you can see the be creative in how we really centered the voices and the experiences of people with arthritis and showed that authentic experience. So here are emails from Brenda, who was one of our campaign case studies, and a lady who was waiting a long time for joint replacement surgery. Here is an example of a sign the card action where we asked people to sign an open card with a message of support for people who have been waiting a long time for joint replacement surgery. So those messages could be shared with people who are on those long waiting lists. And how we used Deborah as well to bring that action to life. As Rebecca said, we tested a value exchange, which was something we were really keen to test, and we had Christmas tags that were developed for our Christmas appeal. So we wanted to test if we could use these to incentivize people to make a donation, and we did some really interesting tests around that. We also tried some fundraising actions. So one of these was our June Steps Challenge, which is one of our larger fundraising campaigns that runs each June, and we encourage people to sign up and take part in that June Steps Challenge. We also tried some just direct donation asks, like simple appeals for a donation built around another of our campaign case studies, Rob, to encourage people to make a donation. And yeah, that's just some examples there. So you can go back over those at your leisure and really see the content there. But it was, yeah, just an illustration of how we built that real personal feel and really built it around the experience of people with arthritis. And I will hand back to Rebecca.
Thanks, Jack. So some results for you. Be prepared for lots of numbers that are hopefully interesting coming your way. So about 90,000 Versus Arthritis supporters have been in the journey over the past 18 months. So that isn't 90,000 all in one journey, because obviously, as you've seen, we've done lots of different ones, but cumulatively, that's about the volume of supporters we're looking at. Some headline results for you from these. So 26 to 35% of supporters in a journey have taken a non-financial action. So that's something that's beyond their initial recruitment action. And lots of these stats you'll see are kind of parameters, and that's because obviously there's lots of different journeys here that we're reporting stats from. We're seeing average email open rates of between 25 and 37%. Now that was up to the end of last year. Email open rates are no longer a reliable metric because of the changes to Apple Mail privacy policy things, which I'm happy to talk to you about separately if you're interested in that. But because they were reliable for some of this period of this project, I'm reporting them here. Between 40 and 50% of supporters have clicked on at least one email in a journey, and we're seeing average unsubscribe rates of about 0.3%, which is fantastic. That's actually lower if you look at ongoing journeys. 3 to 4% of supporters in a journey have taken a financial action of some kind, so that's a one-off donation, a lottery, or a regular gift. How that breaks down is, so of all of those actions, 30% of people are lottery players, 68% are one-off donors with an £8 to £14 average gift, 2% are regular givers, and we're seeing about a £6 to £8 average gift there. It's really important to highlight here that regular gifts were not directly asked for at any point in these journeys, but donors could switch to a regular gift on all donation pages, so that's why we're seeing that as quite a low percentage here. 15 to 22% of donors in a journey have made a second donation. So as Jack said, we didn't have a benchmark when we started this project, but I think we're really pleased with this stat that we're seeing. So in some journeys, up to a quarter of donors are making a second donation, which I think is a really fantastic stat and shows that these journeys are really meeting that objective of building that relationship and deepening support with these supporters. And this is really interesting in terms of where people are donating. So the significant majority of people who gave a one-off, a cash donation, did so after taking an action. So that daisy chaining strategic decision has really worked for us. So people were 3 times more likely to give via a daisy chain ask than a direct email ask. We're seeing about a 6% average conversion rate on daisy chain donation pages. And in sort of absolute terms, 2 to 5% of action takers, depending on the journey, have donated on the thank you page. So again, some really strong results there, and really interesting to see that strategic choice pay off. And as Jack mentioned, we did ask some people in journeys to take part in a fundraising challenge. Our hypothesis is that people with arthritis, this could be more of an interesting financial ask than giving a one-off donation. When taking part in fundraising activities, supporters in a journey were more likely to bank money, and they raised more than supporters not in a journey. So they had a 32% higher average gift and a 31% higher banking rate. Lots of stats here. So this is a percentage of supporters who took the most recent journey action. So for that simplified journey I showed you earlier, we've got a breakdown here between people that were recruited through the pledge and people who are in the campaigns network. As Jack says, just an internal label for people who are kind of in a campaigning segment at the moment. What's really interesting here is you can see the campaigning segment are almost twice as engaged as the pledge takers. So that's a sort of interesting insight there for recruitment strategies. And as you can see, surveys most popular there. The sign the card engagement action did very well across both, as did the poll. Not surprised to see an email to target action doing having less conversions there, because it's obviously quite a high bar action, and quiz at the bottom there. So it just goes to show that quizzes aren't always necessarily the silver bullet when it comes to engagement actions. And finally, this is why I believe everyone should be integrating campaigning, fundraising, and engagement into their journeys. 4 points, newly recruited supporters for one particular welcome journey who took a non-financial action were 4.6 times more likely to make a cash donation. It's really important that I point out here that this is correlation, not causation. And equally, it could be vice versa, that people who donated were more likely to take an action. We've also found out, though, that those who recruited via a campaigning action or were very engaged with Versus Arthritis campaigns were more likely to donate. So there is that hypothesis, I think, we have proven as part of this journey. And then finally, just briefly over to Jack for our key learnings.
Yeah, thank you. So we've learned loads from this activity, and it's been incredible. But just to summarise some of the key learnings that we've got out of this. First, just say that this has been one of our most successful fundraising tests as part of our new mass market fundraising strategy, and it has achieved a lower CPA than any other activity we've tested. So just to give an idea, when we've done direct donate acquisition tests, we've seen CPAs in excess of £150, even as high as £200 in some instances, particularly things like Google and Facebook. But with this approach of bringing in leads and converting them to donors through journeys, we've seen CPAs of less than £20. So it really has been a dramatic shift, and we also think this is just a much more scalable activity. It has a much better ROI, and it helps us to meet a far broader range of organisational objectives. It's not just donor recruitment, it helps us to meet our campaigning objectives, our objectives around information support, and it really is just a much better way of bringing in new donors, we feel. It has also built on and validated our hypothesis that there is this really strong link between engagement, campaigning and fundraising, and particularly that campaigning and fundraising link that Rebecca's just been talking about. We really think it's one of our strengths is to really explore further that link between campaigning and fundraising. It's also shown us that supporters will donate when you give them the right opportunity. So I know certainly we've had this issue in the past, and I'm sure many other fundraisers and other charities have, is people like to protect their audiences, and sometimes campaign teams want to protect all of them campaign contacts, and likewise with services, they want to protect their service contacts because there's this shyness about asking people to support the charity. But we've really shown that when you give them the right opportunity in the right way, people will and do want to support the charity they have a relationship with. And also we've shown that integrated journeys can recruit and retain donors while meeting wider organisational objectives. Campaigning and fundraising aren't mutually exclusive. They benefit each other. People who are financially invested in an organisation are more likely to want to take campaign actions, and likewise, people who are really invested in our campaigning objectives and show that we care about the same things that they care about are much more likely to be to want to financially support that organisation. And also just it's important just to remember the context of where we are as a brand and an organisation. We're a very new brand. We have relatively low brand and cause recognition. We know this is an ongoing problem, and we're very audience specific. So we need to take those results in the context of where we are as an organisation. And also, we're being very careful about jumping to any conclusions. There's lots and lots we still need to test. We want to further explore the potential with more fundraising activity and different fundraising actions. We want to test more value exchange to see if that can be improve our donor conversion rates. And we also really want to test regular giving. So as Rebecca highlighted, we've had a lot of success with our repeat donor, and it might actually be that regular giving asks are more appropriate for people who we've managed to build that relationship with, and they want to kind of give on a more regular basis. And just very briefly before we take questions, next steps. So yeah, we've just gone through this period of change as an organisation, and we are, I think if the advert's not live, it'll be live very soon. And we are recruiting for a new supporter journeys manager, and that's really come from the success of this project and what we've really shown to be the value in supporter journeys as an organisation. We're now investing in a team who can lead on supporter journeys. So if anyone is interested or knows anyone who is, please do have a look at that vacancy. As I say, if it's not up, it will be up very shortly. We're also rolling out what we've learned here and then the best practices that we've developed across our wider organisation. As we said before, these have been a kind of series of pilot projects that have converged, and we want to apply that across the wider organisation. We're also we're merging those silos and pots of support as to create one streamlined organisational integrated responsive journey. So when someone comes to Versus Arthritis and says they want to hear more, they get this great immersive integrated experience. And finally, lots more testing. Got Rhiannon from Care2, who we've been speaking to for a long time. We're really keen to see if Care2 can be a source of new leads, and then how we can use this approach to journeys to build those relationships and to recruit donors from those Care2 leads. We want to test more fundraising challenges, regular give and value exchange, as we said. So there's lots more to do. But yeah, we're all really pleased with the progress. And that's it really. So yeah, just open up the floor to any questions.
Thank you, Rebecca and Jack. That was great, and it was a very generous presentation. You shared a lot, which is brilliant. Consequently, we've also just run over by a few minutes, so we've just got a couple of minutes for questions. There's loads of questions now in the chat, and we will get back to all of them. If you've left a question and you've just got your name there without your organisation, maybe just send me a direct message with your organisation and email so we can get back to you. But the first question was from Lucy Cooper, who was asking how, or if and how social media was integrated into the email journeys. Were these campaigns on social media as well? I guess that's probably for Jack.
Yeah, I can take that. So whenever we did any kind of lead generation work to bring in new leads for journeys, so as I mentioned, that initial lead generation campaign in October and the follow-up in April, and then the test we did around the petition, that all of the recruitment was driven by Facebook ads essentially, and recruiting people through an Engaging Networks landing page. In terms of integrating social media with the wider journey content, where things aligned, we did. So if we were doing a period of campaigning work around a particular issue, so as an example, we did a lot of work last year around joint waiting times for joint replacement surgery, and when there was campaign moments, there would be lots of content out on our social media channels, case studies, updates, that kind of stuff. We made sure that was aligned with the content and the journeys. So yeah, we always tried to make sure the content of the journeys was aligning with that wider organizational message, be that or press and PR or social media or anything like that. So yeah, it had to feel like a cohesive experience for supporters.
I'd also add to that I was developing a lot of the content for the journey, and I took a lot of inspiration just through looking at Versus Arthritis social media channels. So I think they do it really, really well. They've really built a community, particularly on Facebook. So I took a lot of insights there about what posts were doing really, really well, what questions were people responding to, and then used that to develop content for the journey as well. So it wasn't necessarily integrated in the sense that it was all happening at the same time, but reflecting things back and yeah, using that as inspiration and insights for content development.
Great, thank you. The next question or two were about recruitment. Kate had asked where new supporters were recruited from and whether you were working with the acquisition team, and you've just kind of answered that, really, predominantly Facebook, but you might have something else to add to that. And also, Florian was asking how many of the 90,000 were new supporters. You might not have that to hand, but
not the exact figure, but I can give a rough estimate. So in terms of where leads were coming from, yes, overwhelmingly Facebook ads. We, in some of the campaigns, like particularly that first one I mentioned, the October 2020, there was a general sign-up form on our website and some wider media activity that was generally pushing people towards the website, and then there was a mechanism there where people could sign up, but the vast majority came through those direct response Facebook ads that were encouraging people to sign up. We did explore, and we still want to explore using Care2 to bring in leads. We had lots of conversations with Rhiannon, but for various internal reasons, we were never able to get that off the ground. But Facebook was the main source of all of our leads. In terms of the rough breakdown, it's probably slightly less than half would have been new leads over the period. So I'm thinking the October 2020, April 21, and the petition test we did, about half of those 90,000, probably slightly less than half, would have been new leads to the organisation through that activity.
Great, thank you.